Hey, Canteeners, welcome back to another episode of Culper's Canteen Cup. I believe this is episode 87. 87. 13 more to go till the big 100. We have learned a lot over the years about C3. I'll tell you what, the three of us have learned a lot about each other and a lot about what it takes to do a podcast like this. And what we learned over the last weekend was there are three things more important than C3 to us. Number one is family. Family is more important than C3 and recording for our great audience. Number two, the mission. Whatever mission we're on, and we got to accomplish the mission first, and then come C3. And what we learned, most importantly, number three, that's more important than C3 is Walmart. So we learned those three things over the weekend, and it was an eye opening experience. Let me tell you, it's been it's been a busy few weeks for the three of us, and we're looking hopefully this summer to get back on a schedule. But I think we've been saying that since day one. But Josh, I'll tell you what, man. I was thinking about a couple of things. I got back. I was doing squats tonight. I was doing squats. Like deadlifts, you do squats and you get closer to God. And I always have these deep thoughts on my way back home after doing squats or deadlift. And I'll tell you what, one of the thoughts that came through my mind was, man, I can't stand white supremacists, dude. Any type of supremacist, I can't stand them. I mean, what the hell? This kid, they shot up a grocery store there in New York. I mean, kids like that, these white supremacists, these neo Nazis, whatever. Here's the problem: they watch the first 50 minutes of American History X, and then they shut it off because those are the good parts for them, not the shower scene. No, 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 no. Not when Edward Norton breaks down to a black pastor. No, 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 no. We shut it off way before then. So, man, let's just jump right into it. Cover a few news topics today. What's your take on the shooter there in New York?
uh, it's one of those things. So, a lot of things going on with it. People. My biggest issue with it, other than some dude, some absolute crazy, and people can say, well, this is why he did it. This is what he did. It just crazy. He was crazy and evil. Like, that's just plain. We started making excuses for folks a long time ago. It's like, oh, well, they missed a few hugs as a kid, or they got bullied in middle school. They got shoved into a wall locker. They couldn't climb up the rope in gym class. Shit like that. It was like, hey, man, some people are just mentally unstable, and some people are just evil. And this kid was already in, it's the same song and dance. This kid was already on the radar. He had threatened, to shoot up his school a year prior, and he was still able to go purchase, a weapon, which, you know, if you've already made, violent threats to shoot up, a school, stuff like that, then you probably should be on I don't know, maybe a list somewhere of, hey, we should probably not get get this. As far as the meds piece, I don't know if he was on meds. That's a good point. He may have been, he may not have been. He posted his manifesto. One of the biggest problems with these things is they're immediately politicized, and I mean, people are still, they're still doing crime scene investigations, and people are still laying on the floor, in the produce department, all shot up, and people are already out politicizing this thing. And people automatically politicized said the right was responsible for um replacement theory and everything, which if you want to believe that, you can believe that. But his manifesto spoke that he was an authoritarian leftist. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to politicize this. It said he was an authoritarian leftist. He didn't identify with the right. He hated, he railed against cryptocurrency and stuff. And people came out and people were like, Tucker Carlson, you know, called this, caused this. And it's like, what are you talking about? This guy was an authoritarian leftist. Um, but whatever, it's another guy cosplaying. I didn't watch the video is all over Twitter. It's all over some of the feeds, and I did not watch it. I've seen enough of that shit. I don't need to see any more of it. But looking at some of the still frames, and reading some of the eyewitness accounts, this guy had some level of training. He had a decent level of training. One of the first still frames of him in the parking lot, he's got a good C grip, on that rifle. And then, some of the eyewitness counts, this guy was being shot at by the security guard, and while he was under fire, the dude stopped, took cover, reloaded, and then engaged and killed the security guard. So to be able to do that, to be able to control your adrenaline, and we all know, to be able to control your adrenaline and do those things, you have some level of training. Or you're on meds, and he was kitted out. He had plates. I don't know if they were level 3 plates or not. But I think this just it's another you know it's a it's another talking point for the left, going into the midterms. They haven't been able to get traction on really anything. The economy sucks. Everything just generally sucks right now, by and large. And so they're going to try and ride abortion and gun control into the midterms as hard as they can. So I wish New York had the death penalty so they could put this dude to death, but New York taxpayers are going to pay for this dude for the rest of his life. However long he lasts in prison, they throw him in general pop. However long he lasts in there. So it's tragic all around.
So I want to get specific real quick because we had that one, and then we also had one a shooting that happened out in Southern California, right? Where it's basically an Asian guy, and I think he was Chinese descent, and he went to a place that was frequented by a bunch of Taiwanese, and had some shootings there, and they were able to. I think they actually hogtied him, right, with like some electrical cord or something like that until authorities showed up. So good on them, man, because there are several things here that have to happen. There's several things here that are the cause of all this stuff, and several things that you can do to react. I mean, one, here's what pisses me off. Nobody does something like this, not that I can remember in recent memory, without somebody knowing. I mean, right, this guy was already under the radar a year ago, like Josh said. People write things like this. Hey, your parents see things like this go on. Your friends see like this thing, things like this go on. They see you prepping. They see you, your attitude change, your character change. I mean, somebody's got to say something. I mean, that's the, we always go back to, it goes back to the political talking points where, the left and Democrats are, it's the gun manufacturer's fault, and it's the checks, and they'll immediately go back to loopholes and all this stuff, and it's like, well, no, it's not. It's not any of that stuff. It's like, hey, where's the personal responsibility? And again, this is something that I think has been deteriorating since the Obama years. There's no deteriorating, or there's no responsibility anymore. There's no personal responsibility. Or hey, and I know this is going to sound like, I know Josh and Luke are here. Hey, gotta look at your neighbors, right? What are they doing? But so I want to get specific real quick, and I want to ask Luke and ask Josh. So, what do you think specifically should be done for, like, let's say a case like his? Okay. And I don't know all the details. So I know that a year ago he was being looked at by the authorities. I don't know what level, whether it was just local or actual FBI or whatever. Josh pointed out one flaw, right? Background checks exist. They are there. And it's funny that all these other people get through these loopholes because I've never been able to do one or get through one. I own plenty of firearms. I know Josh does and Luke does. And I don't think we've ever caught the loophole in the firearm purchasing thing, right? We just always end up having to go through that background check. But let's do a little hypothetical here, because Luke keeps going back and forth, and I can't tell who he's pointing to, either me or Josh, with these red flag laws. And that's one of the reasons why we don't like Dan Crenshaw. But on a serious note, so you have a guy like this, okay. So a year ago, he's brought to the attention of the authorities, whether it be local or FBI. Now, I think one no brainer. He goes on the quote unquote list. Okay. So when they do that background check, they say, hey, this guy should not be able to own a firearm. Now, that doesn't necessarily do anything if he already owns a firearm or already has access to firearms. So Luke, and we can kick it around. I mean, I don't, we're not going to hold you to the red flag law, but at what point is there any, should we go any farther than that? Okay. So the guy's looked at by local authorities. There's not enough there to press charges. Maybe he's got some mental health issues, what have you, which they won't get his records, but I mean, they could see he's been seen by a doc or whatever. So what's the next step to prevent something like this, if anything, from happening again?
Well, first of all, Josh is the one that said a list. And that's when I started typing in the chat. Oh, red flag laws. I can't believe that's coming out of your mouth. I know that's not what he meant. I was giving him hassle, but it's a nuanced conversation. I'll tell a quick story, and you guys may or may not know what I'm talking about here. But a few years ago, there's always vets in crisis. A lot of guys have a hard time, and we hear things about our friends, and they're doing crazy stuff out there, and these are your friends. But at one point, one of our friends who does not listen to the show and never will, uh, was acting out. He was acting pretty crazy. And anyone who listens to the show and knows the three of us probably know what we're talking about. I didn't do anything about it, but an outside person, uh, outside of the three of us, who also doesn't listen to the show ever, actually made a call to the authorities and didn't necessarily rat this person out, but did say, "Hey, you need to maybe check on this guy, maybe check on him." And back then, that was a good call. First of all, you got to have the courage to do stuff like that, but it's a slippery slope, right, Josh? I mean, it's a very, very slippery slope. I am. This is such a nuanced conversation, much like the abortion conversation. It's like we're wary of red flag laws because anytime somebody talks about red flag laws, they talk about how messed up veterans are in the head who have been, combat veterans. It's like that could very easily be a disqualifier for owning a firearm. With this kid, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the story is. Just like you said, Roger, I don't know the whole background of it. I don't know what the quote unquote red flags were with him. But I will say this: we got some law enforcement folks that listen to the show, and the ones that do listen to the show are pretty senior guys. They've been on the beat before, and I think that they would be the first ones to tell you. I mean, it just requires a lot of work. I mean, if this person is on, federal law enforcement's radar, well, then, in my opinion, it's on federal law enforcement to go down to the local level and say, "Hey, local police, local sheriff, maybe you should check up on this guy every month." And it wouldn't take much to do that. It really wouldn't. I'm not saying the cops don't do their job. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying a lot more community outreach. I am all in favor of that when it comes to policing and law enforcement. The more they're out on the street, the more they're talking to people who need to be talked to in a friendly, cordial way, the better, man. It's all about the community, right? But I'll tell you this before I kick it to Josh. Um, I'll tell you a couple things before I kick it to Josh. First of all, I guarantee you this guy was on some sort of meds to balance him out, whatever. I promise you that is the case. You'll never hear about it, though. You will never hear about it. And, not that I'm a conspiracy theorist a little bit, but when it comes to we've all seen it for the past 2 years, when it comes to the lobby that the pharmaceutical industry has right now, it's not in their best interest for it to get out that anyone who commits a mass shooting or violence of any sort that reaches the national news, it's not in their best interest to advertise this guy was on Zoloft or whatever. That's immediate crash in stock prices right there for whatever reason. So I think that there's a mental health crisis, absolute mental health crisis. I think this guy was on some sort of meds. I think that should be the problem that's addressed uh, before firearms. And one more thing before I kick it to Josh. Uh, Maybe I own firearms. No, I don't. I don't have a single one. There's a lake out here. I said this 2 episodes ago. There's a lake in front of my house. The other day I had all my firearms in it. There weren't many. There were only like two. And the kayak turned over and they went to the bottom of the lake. Dude, I don't own any firearms. How many times, Mr. ATF, you listening? There ain't no firearms in this house. I got a crossbow. But anyway, it's also high capacity. It's got 3 arrows. So Josh, what's the answer to this kind of stuff? I mean, some people, would you agree or disagree with this statement? Some people should not own firearms. Would you agree or disagree, and then elaborate?
So I agree with that statement. I do believe that some people should not own firearms. But before I get on, the my problem with that uh, is, so this is really not a this guy like a red flag law. I don't support red flag laws, but this wasn't like, hey man, I know Johnny, and Johnny's just he's going through a really tough time right now. He's irritable. he's quick to anger and I'm just really concerned. It's like, no, you had a legitimate threat from this dude saying, I am going to shoot this place up and kill everybody. Like, that's not a red flag law at that point. That's not a, hey man, I think this dude might, somebody might need to check on this. That is a, no, this dude has voiced a threat, right? That's you're past red flag law at that point. So it's red flag law, and that's a little bit of a misnomer. Why do I think that not everybody should? Because there are absolutely crazy people out there. There are absolutely crazy people. Back before we decided to empty out all the mental institutions, I would say yes, people who are locked up in a mental institution should not own firearms. That's just, I don't think people in prison right now should own firearms. If you murdered 20 people, like when this dude gets out of prison, if he ever gets out of prison, which I don't, I doubt he will, but let's just say he did, because New York is not, New York does cater to criminals. Hey, guess what, man? You don't get to own a firearm because you murdered a bunch of people. But here's where I'm a hard stop on this is who gets to decide. Who gets to decide who's crazy and who's not crazy? So let's take us. 3 combat vets, right? I mean, we weren't going through breaches every night, multiple breaches. We weren't stacking bodies, and we weren't up to our armpits in spent brass and hand grenade pins, but we had our share of it. So who's to say that, well, you probably have a little bit of post-traumatic stress from that. So we're not going to let you own firearm just because. So who gets to decide? And that's my problem with it, right? But nobody wants to have that discussion. Everybody's quick to go and get entrenched in their positions. And I'm the same way. I get entrenched in mine. And until somebody can have an honest, logical, non-emotional conversation about who gets to decide, I'm not willing to give an inch. I am absolutely not willing to give an inch on any additional gun control. None whatsoever. None. Even the bump stock thing. The bump stock thing was incredibly stupid. I think they're gimmicky. I don't like them. Never own one. But I was so mad at Trump when he banned them because, again, you're just getting it's just another inch that you've given up. It drives me nuts. But until we're able to have that conversation, that rational conversation on who gets to decide, I'm not willing to support any gun control laws, and I won't support any political candidate who supports gun control laws. Period.
So something that's interesting is this kid. He said, of course, you can't really find his manifesto anywhere. I think social. Well, you can, but you got to dig for it. 180 pages, supposedly. I think it's important personally for people to read that and understand just how nuttier than squirrel turds, right, Josh? I mean, just how nutty this guy was. But you can't find it because they're they're censoring it on social media. So, but one of the things that did get out about that manifesto is the one thing that he said himself in the manifesto was that one thing that drove him toward some of these ideas that he found on 4chan and so on and so forth, the Sturmer Daily or whatever it was the sheer boredom he felt during COVID because of the lockdowns. He said that. And I found that very, very interesting. And Roger, I want to kick it over to you. I think unless you want to address the crazy white supremacists some more, and feel free to do that. But there's a headline in the Wall Street Journal today that says, pandemic's pressures widen embrace of long-lasting drugs for addiction, mental illness. And man, we called that one, didn't we? We called that one real early on. And man, isn't that just a boon for all the pharmaceutical industries? And and the New York City health chief said, wear masks indoor, high COVID alert level is coming. It's like, when does this stuff end? And, good news for Trump, I guess. I mean, Fauci said, if Trump is president, I won't serve under him. And I'm like, man, wow, there's not a more ringing endorsement than that. I mean, you could get Ronald Reagan and FDR. If they could come back from the dead and endorse you, maybe that would be better. But man, ringing endorsement from Fauci. So what do you make of this, man? I threw you a few things there.
Well, first back to the shooting real quick. So, and I think this is where the red flag laws come in, or the idea or suggestions. And I agree with Josh. I mean, one, who gets to decide, and then two, I'm not really sure I want my medical records being thrown around like the government's hands. Like, who's going to look at this? How are you going to store this? And we already know they can't secure anything. So there's a lot of accountability and oversight issues there, which is why I think it'll never happen, right? I mean, you're never going to set up anything to be able to decide. But like with this kid here, from I read, he made a threat against the school last year, and the New York State authorities came down and they actually did a mental eval on that guy. So I don't know what the outcome of all that stuff was, but it seems to me at that time, hey, if there's enough there that there's obviously some mental issues, it just goes back to saying, okay, well, what's the next step then? And I don't know that there is one, because I think like Josh brought up, okay, so who decides then? What medical records do you have to give up? Or are they just going to subpoena these things, or they can just go get them? And who do they go to? Does it go to a judge? Does it go to somebody locally or whatever? And to kind of touch base with, I think right now the big answer is just like, hey, people that know each other, like Luke brought up with his example, we know what's going on in our friends and families' lives. And at that point, and it's not to say that law enforcement or anybody else has got to get involved, but it's part of reaching out. When you look at, well, hey, maybe we should just defund police and get social workers. Hey, I got an idea, like Luke's saying, maybe you take some of those social workers and you use them to reach out. Hey, we've got some folks here that, have had issues and this and that, and you reach out, and you got to do it in a non-incriminating way, and hey, you're going to jail and we're going to come confiscate everything or whatever. But a lot of times just bringing up the subject, it's like the suicide awareness thing, right? And suicide, just like, hey, sometimes you just got to ask. It's just the way it is. Nobody's going to kill themselves because you ask them if they're going to kill themselves. And I know that's not a perfect solution, but that's part of it is, having some responsibility, one, personal responsibility, but then as family members, as friends. And I think the three of us here, if we had some, if we noticed something like that happening with Luke, if he ever bought another firearm again or something like that, we'd ask him, hey man, are you doing all right? How things all right at the home front and this and that, because somebody knows, people know what's going on. And going to the point with, the whole COVID and lockdowns and this and that, specifically with him, and I'll release it to Josh for his, he's got one more thought on this thing, but I think a lot of that stuff, it's not only just boredom, and this second one, I thought a lot, people are angry, man. And they're angry, they're frustrated. Some of them are bored. They're looking for a way to lash out. They're looking for some type of outlet, and a lot of these folks have had nothing to do over the last 2 years and longer now, but sit here and stew on this stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous, and we called it from the very beginning. The fallout from all of these, mandatory efforts with the masks and the lockdowns and isolation, it's going to be 100 times what COVID ever, the amount of people that COVID ever ends up killing, as far as people. I mean, they just released another thing today that we're saying that, oh, by the way, you were more, I think, if under 25 years old, and one of the representatives actually tweeted it, you were more likely to die from a car crash than you are COVID. And, and when Trump said that, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, whatever, oh, he's great. It's funny because Luke said, well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Well, yeah, I kind of am. Well, no, you're not when those conspiracies come true. I mean, it's like you sit here, he made the claim about Alex Jones, and I do not believe everything Alex Jones says, but I will tell you this, there is a lot that he said that everybody was like, man, he's whacked out. It's like, no, this was kind of true. Yep, this was kind of true. This was kind of true. Basically, everything that they said wasn't true on all of these quote unquote conspiracy theories have come true. And the problem is they won't, it's not a problem. The left and the Democrats and the progressives won't come out, and the Republicans have the same issue, is they want to address these one at a time. Okay, if this is not true, like 2,000 mules, we talked about that a little bit. That's out there now. And if all of this data is not true, then tell me how it's not. Debunk it. It's not true because of this. One of the things they started with was the cell phone location and the accuracy of it. All three of us know how accurate those are. So we'll just leave that as it is. And you'll notice that excuse was used for less than a day. I think some pretty high level folks like, yeah, no, these are actually pretty accurate. So you just need to move on. So it's like, hey, if it's not true, that's fine, man. I'm looking for the truth too. Debunk it. Tell me where it's at. Tell me why it's not true. But let me throw it over to Josh. I know he's got one last thing to say about this the shooter.
Yeah, real quick on that, you touched on, the conspiracy theories and the truth. So for the last couple of years, what's the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth? It's been about 6 months. That's the difference, right? But on the shooter thing, you touched on that, that the community piece. And I think this goes back to a lot of other things, when you're talking about, government welfare and stuff like that. Like that stuff starts at the community level. That stuff starts at the neighbor friend level, right? We all know, we all have friends, and us included, that we know when it's like, hey man, we all follow each other on social media, and we see social media posts and we start looking at it, and they're a little out of the norm for that individual. And maybe that individual has a history, maybe they don't, whatever, but you look at it and you're like, hey man, something's off with Joe. Let me here. I'm gonna hit him up, on text or on message. Be like, hey man, you okay? You doing all right? What's going on? Do you need to talk? Whatever. And that's what really needs to happen, across the country. Is it should start at the community, level. You should, look out for your neighbor, and your neighbor looks out for the person on the other side of them, and they look out for on the side of them. And you talk about churches, synagogues. That's where that stuff starts. But the left and progressives have destroyed that. They've destroyed the sense of community, by destroying the nuclear family, by really pushing identity politics. Well, don't talk to your neighbor because they're a different color than you, or they're a different ethnicity than you, or they're this or that. Well, you're not them. You shouldn't be able to speak on that. Um, because you're just a middle aged white guy, and you're the problem. And so yeah, no, I just want to dogpile on that, man, because I think that community piece, I think that's a very important point, and that's where a lot of things should start, and be handled, and it won't get up to the federal level. It doesn't need to. It keeps the federal government where they belong, out of your life. Um, so yeah, I'll throw it over to Luke, man. Just want to throw that in.
So a couple things, and I don't know. You guys can fight over who takes this one. A couple of headlines. We're giving you a sneak peek of Culper's quick takes because I'm going to put one of those together tonight and hopefully put it out before this episode comes out. So some of these headlines will be in that. One headline I found particularly interesting was Serbia's capital Belgrade paralyzed due to numerous bomb threats. Anytime I see Belgrade bomb threats and related to Ukraine, I get a little I get a little antsy, get a little ants in my pants there. Old Franz Ferdinand died in Belgrade, started World War One and led to World War Two. So keep a close eye on that. Now, so talking about that, and I think the bomb threats were they said it was coming from outside the country because Serbia was unwilling to sanction Russia in any way. So anyway, I think that that's something worth keeping an eye on. Balkans, there will be another war there, and world wars tend to grow out of that area. So Roger, or no, wait, you know what? Let's go to Josh because Josh is the one that made a post. I think Glenn Greenwald said something similar. Our buddy Chris, who occasionally listens to the show, posted it as well on Facebook. I think we've sent a lot of money to Ukraine over the past month or so. And Josh and Glenn Greenwald and Chris, I'm not going to ask you to name the exact amounts, Josh, but like this is a lot of money we're sending over there. And, you know, if you put that in the context of how much money we were spending on Afghanistan, I mean, could you maybe talk a little bit about that and maybe why Rand Paul is being so demonized because he's asking for a little bit of accountability on it?
Yeah, so the last number that I saw, and these are ballpark, these aren't exact, and I'll have it sitting up in front of me. But so we just had the bill go through, and that's the one that Rand Paul initially balked on, was $40 billion. 40 billion. We spent approximately 54 billion on the war in Afghanistan. We are going to send Ukraine $40 billion on top of what we already sent them, and I think it comes out to a couple 100 billion of what we've total to Ukraine. Since this thing started. And here's so I have a couple questions. I get, you know, I get that we help our allies. I get that, but Ukraine's not in NATO. We have no treaty with them that requires us to protect them. Um, and you know, so Russia is pushed back to, hey, dude, they don't even control as much as the Donbas as they control before they, continued their push inward at this point. So my question, and now they're actually, Putin's withdrawing, completely withdrawing. So here's my question: why are we still sending them money to fight Russia? Russia's leaving. Russia's done. Russia's lost 1/3 of their ground force, is what what a lot of folks are saying now. 1/3 of Russia's ground force is gone. So why are we still sending them money? Here's why we're sending them money. Remember when Trump got impeached over the phone call to Zelensky about corruption and Biden and everybody? It's because Ukraine is the money launderer. That's the ATM. We're going to keep pushing money into Ukraine, and that shit is coming out the back end and going into foundations and charities, and it's filling the coffers of both Democrats and Republicans. Joe Biden went over there. Next thing you know, Mitch McConnell and crew are over there. Pelosi's over there. Like, why are all these people going to this, this war zone to go talk to Zelensky? Why is Zelensky, speaking at the Oscars? Why is it's all very, very strange. All very, very strange. The amount of money that we have pushed into Ukraine all of a sudden. And Rand Paul, they want to villainize Rand Paul because all Rand Paul asked was for some oversight to know exactly where every penny of US taxpayer dollars was going once it hit Ukraine. And he got vilified by both sides for it. Why? Because he's effing with their cash cow. He's messing with the cash cow. And just like when Trump came in and, started calling people out on both sides, they don't like it. The establishment does not like you messing with their cash cow. Yes, damn it. So that that whole thing is just, and people are eating it up. The second that you question, wait, why are we sending $40 billion to Ukraine? They're like, oh, look, a Putin puppet, Putin bot, Putin. You're like, motherfucker, it's not their money. It's our money. It's not Congress's money. People are like, well, that's Congress's money. No, it's not. It's not Congress's money. It's our money. It's our damn money. But people are people are so stupid that they don't care. They're, this is the thing. Give it a little bit, and they're going to have Somali flags, in their Twitter bios, because now we're pushing troops back to Somalia for some reason. I don't know why we are pushing troops to Somalia. Al-Shabaab is not an existential threat. They've never been an existential threat. People are automatically going to say, well, Josh, you don't know what you're talking about because the underwear bomber was, inspired by Al-Shabaab. Yeah, okay. You've got one idiot who managed to get on an airplane with some C4 in his dickies, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, Al-Shabaab's an existential threat. They're not. I've been there. I've been to Mogadishu. I've been all over Somalia. They're not an existential threat. We have zero reason to be in Somalia other than the fact that war is good for business. That's it. I warned us about this crap, and we're not listening. And so now we have, here's where the part that really, kind of worries me is now we have Russia. They've lost 1/3 of their ground force. Putin may be dying of cancer or, the plague or something. He's got some health problems, and everybody pretty much agrees on that from, what they're seeing. You rarely see instances of him, like, standing up and walking around, and, he's not out riding bears anymore, or, with his shirt off. Like, he's looking a little puffy, in the face, and he's not looking very spry. So you got that, and now Finland and Sweden they're fast tracking to join NATO. And so, okay, I don't know why. Why is Finland and Sweden joining NATO? Are they not safe not being in NATO? I mean, they haven't been in NATO this long. Why now? Why the rush now to go to NATO? What they're doing, I believe this, is I really, really think they are pushing for Putin to do something stupid so they can justify going to war with Russia. I truly think that. Because why now? Why Finland and Sweden and NATO now? Nobody that people I've seen people ask that question on social media. I've seen people ask that question on the news, and nobody has a good answer.
And Josh, I'm no fan of Erdogan, the leader
No,
in
no.
Turkey,
Oh
but
God, no.
a broken clock is right twice a day, right? And he's the one saying, "No, I don't think they should come in," for his own reasons. But it's like, Jesus, man, can we not get a check on what's going on right now? Can we not just slow our roll for half a second?
Yeah, because what you have right now is you have Putin. You've got a wounded cat backed into a corner, and what is it? What's going to happen? The dude had. I mean, they do. One thing Russia does have, they might not have a whole lot of T-92s left anymore. After Ukraine, but they got plenty of nuclear weapons. They've got plenty of those, and if it comes down to hey man, the state is in danger of falling. Who knows? But we're gonna push Sweden and Finland into NATO because now it's of dire importance. Now that Russia's lost 1/3 of their ground force, well, what's the threat? If we keep saying Russia's not a threat, they're pulling out of Ukraine. They don't have the Russian army has been way overestimated. Why the rush to get them into NATO? It doesn't. To me, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But they want war, and that makes sense because the government they've proven that time and time again. So that's my take. Long drawn out. I'll stop rambling.
Well, and you hit it on the head with the timing with Sweden and Finland. Like to me, once they went back into the Ukraine, that's the time when you say, "Hey, yeah, maybe we need to join NATO, right? Because maybe we're next." And that happens within a matter of a couple of days. You don't wait this far into the conflict when it's not the very beginning when everybody's like, "Oh, Russia's going to take Ukraine in 3 days." Except for obviously the folks here. I mean, Luke called it from the very beginning. This was going to be a very protracted event here, and while all the experts on CNN and MSNBC is like, "Oh, 72 hours, they're going to fall," right? It's like General Milley. She's the exact opposite. 9 months. No, it's actually 9 days or whatever. But I see at the very beginning those countries saying, "Hey, maybe we need to really take a look at joining NATO because of the timing." You don't wait 2 months as Russia's withdrawing and then make that decision. I do think there's a push by the administration because, especially with both of them, and in particular Sweden, always remaining neutral. It's like, hey, now the iron's hot. Maybe now's a good time that we can, convince them to join NATO. So I think there might be a push from the administration there. But at the same time, with all of this stuff, with the whole Ukraine money, this and that, so the money pisses me off because Josh called it out. That is our money. I mean, we are sending equivalent to $100 million a day to Ukraine. Now, to put this in perspective, our total aid to them last year was $300 million annually, total. Okay. So we are actually on track to send them more, if we haven't already done it, send them more money than what the entire Russian, defense budget is. Obviously, what the entire, Ukraine defense budget. So it's like, where's this money going? Well, the money's coming right back to the politicians through lobbying firms and charities and other type of things. It's not Congress's money. It's our money. I mean, especially around tax time, and I know we're not alone there. A lot of our listeners out there end up writing another check. The government already takes money out of your paycheck, and you end up still paying a tax bill. Here's something else that pissed me off, and it's a little bit it's a little bit of a tangent, but like California Governor Newsom, did you guys hear about their budget surplus in California?
Yeah, it's
$100
crazy.
billion. So since when did state governments become profitable? I mean, they've always been, right? But they're not supposed to be. The state should break even every year. The state should break even minus I understand, hey, we need a rainy day fund. I think Arizona has a rainy day fund where I get it. You actually have to plan for, humanitarian disasters and things like the coronavirus or whatever, where, whatever action shut down the economy for 2 or 3 months. So I understand having that little bit of pad there. $100 billion. And California is the most, if not the most, it's one of the most, top 2 or 3 most expensive places to live just because of taxes. If I'm a resident there, I'm like, why do we have $100 billion extra? Like, why don't you just reduce my taxes? But it's a big circle. Again, this is how they'll continue to take as much money because they think they're profitable. Congress thinks that they're supposed to be profitable. And all Rand Paul did, like Josh said, was like, hey, we just want some accountability for this stuff. They're now finding out that COVID relief money, like $160 billion was stolen. I tell you what, I know a lot of, not personally, no, anecdotally, right? But there are a lot of vets on the streets. And not just vets. There are a lot of homeless folks that money could go take care of. I mean, they sat there. What was it? It was the UN, right, that told Elon Musk that like $6 billion would stop world hunger.
Yep.
So I mean, so clearly we could have stopped world hunger 200 times over, right? But we're not even doing it in our own. We're not even doing it in our own country. I mean, you go down to any, and this is with, I don't care if you're a Republican state or a Democrat state. I mean, we have just as many tent cities down here, downtown Phoenix, as they do in California. Maybe not to the extent of what they have in San Francisco and that, but we got a whole lot of homeless people out there. We got a whole lot of folks that need help. Hey, you really want to give help as opposed to, I mean, hell, the government already knows what we all make. We all file taxes. Hey, you really want to give stimmy checks out and this and that? I have no problems with people that are at the, at the poverty line. They're working at the McDonald's and, it's their full-time job and they're supporting families and this and that. Hey, you want to subsidize gas prices? Go do that. There's a lot of things that you can do to subsidize what's out there to try to curb inflation. And that pisses me off too, inflation, because we've been calling for this for like 2 years, year and a half, right? And now all of a sudden, that's why, I sent out this tweet the other day. I know I'm a little all over the place, but these people, they piss me off because this is stuff like, I think, all 3 of us and our listeners are above the 50% line as far as, education and intellect or whatever. It's like, this is not rocket science. We have all been seeing this. We've all been calling, and they are so reactive to everything. Luke just put down there, how much baby formula does 100 million buy? That's crazy. You're absolutely right. And then, you can't even make this up where Psaki, she's gone now, but she, according to her, the administration was tracking this shortage since August of last year. But then Biden comes out and says, I don't even think it was a full day. Well, this one kind of just snuck up on us. Well, which one is it, Joe? It snuck up on you? Or did you actually see this coming back in August when, Abbott had to shut down? And oh, by the way, the White House came out and said, oh, yeah, those deaths were attributed to, I think it was actually Psaki, attributed to the bacteria, at the Abbott labs. And then Abbott actually had to come out and say, no, that's not correct. And they had 4 or 5 comments. And our listeners out there can go Google it and look it up. But they're basically like, there were 0 deaths attributed to the Abbott labs in this instant. That bacteria was not found in any, and they did. I mean, you can imagine the amount of tests they run. And they said, hey, it's not linked to any of this stuff. Well, the Abbott lab is still not up and running, the one that produces baby formula. And now I just heard today that the administration is actually suing the Abbott lab to open back up.
Yep.
Like they're suing a public/private company, organization, entity. Well, no, you actually need to open back up, and we're going to make you do that. We're going to make you work. Dude, you can't make any of this stuff up. And I get there's some things that you don't foresee, but I saw this on, and I'm going to take credit for it because I can't remember who I got it from, but here's the administration's response to everything. First, come out and say there's no problem. You know what? There's no problem. There's no inflation. There's no shortage, right? Remember it was like a year ago. There's not going to be no food shortage. What are you talking about, man? This and that. Then, as clearly there is a problem, you admit that there's a problem, but you say it's transitory. You know what? We have a problem right now. It'll be gone in 30 days. It's transitory. With inflation, you had 60 Nobel Prize winners, economists come out. No, I think we're going to be all right. Hell, even me and Josh, and I might end up eating some crow here with Josh, and talking about the recession. But even Josh, like, no, dude, this is kind of happening, and this is going to happen here sooner than later, probably sooner. But all these smart guys, MIT grads and Harvard grads. No, I'm a Nobel Prize winning economist. Not going to happen. So the second step is admit that there's a problem, but it's only transitory. And then the third and final step is when you actually have a problem and it's not transitory anymore, you just blame the problem on somebody else. You blame it on Putin, right?
Well, I'm getting closer and closer to being on Josh's page. Roger is the silver lining of our group, but I'm getting closer and closer to Josh's view that it's all going down, bro. It's all going down. Uh, easy times make weak men, right? But I'll tell you, this is another thing I was thinking after my sets of squats today. I was like, you know what? I think Gen Xers, I think we can bring ourselves out of this, man. We got a bunch of septuagenarians running this country right now who can't get on the same page as their peppermint patty, press secretary. It's out of hand. And I'm talking about Mitch McConnell. I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi. I'll even lump Chuck Schumer in there, even though he's not as old as they are. But Ron DeSantis is 43 years old. We're in our 40s, all three of us, for the time being. I think we can dig ourselves out of this, man. I really do, man. It's going to be hard times. Uh, it may not be as hard as some people think in this podcast, but it's definitely not easy right now, folks. Good Lord, look at what's going on. There's a baby formula shortage in the United States of America because of the reasons Roger said. That's true. That's true. It's bureaucracy. It's the FDA, the USDA, all these bureaucrats, basically, all these agencies getting involved and gumming up the works. And it's bad enough in good times. It's bad enough in good times, but you put COVID on top of that. We all knew, our audience knew, man, this is not going to be good. You cannot shut down the global economy and expect it just to bounce back. And let me tell you something, it's not going to bounce back this year or next year or the year after. It's not. This is a long road. And I'm not letting Joe Biden off the hook, man. A good, strong Reagan-esque type president could have put it on track a little bit quicker than this. This is shameful what's going on right now. But again, Gen Xers, man, we're the ones that are going to have to take the lead. It ain't going to be the millennials. I can tell you that right now. It ain't going to be the Gen Zers. We've been around plenty of them lately. It ain't going to be them. It's going to be us that's going to have to put it on our backs, and we're going to have to carry it across the goal line, to use a football euphemism. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to kick it to Josh, and he can talk about whatever he wants. But again, I'm telling you, if you guys read our blog on www.culperscanteencup.com, some of this won't be a surprise to you. And I saw a headline, and I'm like, this is the bomb. This is the bomb. And this one's going in the quick takes. Headline: a young man went on a violent spree in an Anchorage complex for seniors. An 88-year-old fought him off. Bro, life goals. Life goals. Get harder to kill. When you're 88, you should be able to take down a young man, roughing up the seniors around your senior complex, right, Josh? I'm putting the spot on you, Josh. You're going to be able to talk about whatever you want. So go ahead, brother.
I love it. That reminds me of you guys remember that video of like that old dude who's on the bus and he's got this young punk just constantly just chatting at him. He comes up and he tries to push this old guy, and the old guy, that dude was asleep before that kid hit the ground. Man, he hit him one time and that was a wrap. And everybody on the bus looked at him. Everybody looked at that kid and was like, yeah. Yep, he deserved it. The baby formula shortage it blows my mind, right? Because this is again, like you said, this is the United States of America. The fact that we have a baby formula shortage is absolutely insane. I'd be curious to know how much baby formula is sitting on the border right now that we've given to illegal immigrants. And people are, oh, you're cold, you're heartless, you're callous. No, I'm America first. If I have enough left over after I take care of Americans, then I will help you. But I'm going to take care of Americans first. The same thing with the money. we're going to take care of Americans first. And if there's a little bit of money left over, sure, we'll send some t-shirts to the poor kids, in Africa so they don't have to walk around naked. But hey, man, if I take care of Americans first and I ain't got any left over, well, sorry, not sorry. The baby formula. But get this. So I was reading up on the baby formula thing. The USDA will not authorize the import of baby formula from Europe. You know why? Because the labeling does not meet FDA standards. Well, of course it doesn't meet FDA standards. It's not regulated by the FDA, you idiots. They don't have a problem with the ingredients, right? The article that I pulled up from the FDA, they don't have a problem with the ingredients. It's because the label does not meet their standard. It's like we don't have baby formula for babies in the United States, and you're going to say no because the label doesn't meet your standard. Well, the label's that it's not FDA approved. Well, no shit, because it's not regulated by the FDA. But if it's the same ingredient, same stuff, what do you like? You better get your ass off your high horse and get some baby formula in here. I don't get it. I don't get it. But Luke's right, man. Luke's absolutely 100% right. Like we are in a bad spot. Another thing that boggles my mind, I posted this on my Book of Faces, and Luke is absolutely, there's a mental health crisis in this country. It is. I think it's been coming for a very long time. It started to show itself before COVID, but COVID broke, like the dam broke wide open. And again, it's back when we started normalizing crazy. We shut down the mental institutions and we took the rope out of gym class and we put all these anti-bullying, zero tolerance laws in place to where, you're going to go to jail if you bully your buddy in middle school. But there's this man, he is a biological man who thinks he's a woman, who is posting while they're at work that they are, quote, 37 weeks into my simulated pregnancy. About 3 more weeks to go. And my question is this: what the fuck is going to happen in 3 weeks? Like what does he think's going to happen in 3 weeks? And people are entertaining this. People are like, well, that's fine. It doesn't matter. They can identify as a microwave. I don't care. It's fine. Everything's fine. Fucking world's burning around them. Sorry for the F-bombs. But everything's fine.
He can always get an abortion. Right up to point of birth. That's probably his point of view. Right up to point of birth. I
was just like, and now there's a push. I saw today because I had to dig into the replies on this, on this tweet, because I'm a glutton for punishment. And there's a legit push in California for maternity leave for trans men. And it's like, what? Hold it. You're not having the baby. It's kind of like, it's like Mayor Pete. One of the reasons the supply chain is all screwed up because that dude had like 4 months of maternity leave while there's, a bajillion cargo ships sitting out, off the coast, at all of our major ports. He's on maternity leave with his fake. Did you see his picture with the fake breastfeeding thing?
Good Lord.
Come on. We are not a serious country anymore. We're not. Like we're just not. I love my granddads, but I'm so glad they're dead. Because my granddads, they would, I don't know. I might have had to call the police to stop them from shooting up a place.
They wouldn't understand, dude. They would not understand. They wouldn't get it.
Dude, my granddads, they were like, I will take a flamethrower to this place. Everything. I will burn everything and everybody down. They would be disgusted. Absolutely disgusted on where we're at. Here's part. 3 more weeks to go. To what? You are a dude. You are not going to your pretend pregnancy. You're not going to have a baby. You're not really pregnant, bro. So it's 3 more weeks to go. Okay. I, I'm gonna I'm gonna follow him from the C3 account because I need to know what happens in 3 weeks. like I know, like I need some closure on this. It's like the crazy train is gone, but I and I'm glad Luke's finally coming to the dark side because it's done, dude. This is done. You go back and you take a look at Rome, where they were, you know, when Rome really started falling and when Rome was like, okay, man, it's, that trajectory, that downward trajectory, like they're not going to pull out of it. We are about in the same place. The military, the legions became politicized, military leaders became politicized. They started picking sides. The economy, the money was worth nothing. It's there's more similarity, but dude, I truly think we have seen the heyday of the United States, and it all started when we closed the mental institutions and took the rope out of gym class. That was our downward moment right there. We jumped the shark. It's all done. So anyway, that's what I want to talk about. Thanks, Luke.
But I think the midterms will be very telling, right? Because I think it's clear when you look at and from a non partisan point of view. Not that I'm nonpartisan, but you know what I mean. It's the trying to be objective about it. There aren't too many things that you can say are going very well right now across the board. And what I pray is that during the midterms, you get that red wave. You get some true conservatism there, some fiscal conservatives, some people that have some common sense, and that voters elect them. Because I don't know we can take another cycle. And I'm glad you're typing that because we're going to bring that up. So I don't know we can go through another election cycle, with the same trajectory that we're on right now. I mean, we just can't. And I want to believe, and this is me being the eternal optimist, like all these people out there, and like the one that Josh just mentioned. I mean, dude, there's no way that represents a significant percentage of American voters. God, I hope not. I hope not. And I'm hoping that's enough that, it's like the Republicans right now. You're starting to see more and more articles with Gavin Newsom running for president. And I'm pretty sure that you're going to start seeing some GOP actually throw out some ads for Gavin Newsom because that's what they want him to run for president. They want it to be, do not California the rest of America. That's what the GOP wants. That's what the Republicans want. So, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Talking about the elections, I want to hit Josh up on this because he is not a fan of Dr. Oz. And you're right. Yeah, Mayor Pete's been, talking about him running in 2024. He's been getting a lot of TV time. He was on there today, and I think he actually said, well, the U.S. government doesn't make baby formula. Well, no shit. I mean, just like I don't understand. I just don't understand some of the responses of some of these people. But I want to talk a little bit. We've got some primaries tomorrow. I mean, this thing will come out and the primaries will be over with. But I think there's Pennsylvania primary. I think there's North Carolina primary. We've been chatting back and forth with the Pennsylvania primary, and I think it's probably fair. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I followed a couple of the headlines with the endorsement of Dr. Oz by Trump, but outside of that, not overly familiar with Pennsylvania politics. So I kind of went into Dr. Oz's thing, and you read a couple of the issues that he's having, and then obviously what his response to it is, and his, what his plan of action is as far as being a pro-Trumper or a Trumper. I asked Josh who he would support, and he said Kathy Barnett. Now, looking back at it, from what I know, I probably think McCormick's got the best shot. Even though Dr. Oz is leading in the polls. But, my response to him over this thing with the whole Dr. Oz thing, and this is what I think Trump is doing, is he's trying to pick people who can win in a purple state. And especially with everything that's come out lately, there's no way Kathy Barnett wins Pennsylvania. If Kathy Barnett wins the primary, that seat will go blue. I mean, that is a fact. We've been talking back and forth on text that, she's got a lot of issues, man. I mean, one, she claims she was former military, and I have no reason to believe she wasn't, prior military. I think she actually has a a picture in her class A's or whatever, but there are a lot of questions on her military service. So why not release a DD-214? It's pretty easy, right? Even if it's not spectacular, as in, some of these guys jump out of, airplanes shooting people in the face. Why not just release a DD-214 and answer that or respond to that? When you look at some of her previous employments, I think she talked about working for like JP Morgan and Chase and a couple of these other folks, and nobody can find any real work histories. Like, why don't you release details on that? But more than any of that, this is what's going to kill her. You cannot come out and say all of Islam is bad. Death to all of Islam. You cannot come out and be like, hey, I hate all gay people. Sorry, you're not going to win an election at that point. Now, I'm not saying that the Dr. Oz endorsement by Trump, but I tell you one, there's a lot of people who were endorsing Kathy that's like, that probably wasn't a smart play. And I don't know what Dr. Oz brings over, over McCormick. And why Trump would endorse him over McCormick. But I can tell you up the front, right off the bat, the vote for Kathy is a vote for a blue senator, period. That's going to happen. She cannot win. That's a fact. She cannot win. And I agree with everybody on that. Now I'll kick it to Josh. He can shake Josh, if you think that she can win coming out saying that I hate all gays and Islam is evil and they all need to die. If you believe that, you are part of the problem. So anyway, I will throw it to you because I actually think McCormick might be the better shot at winning than Dr. Oz.
I have never heard or seen anybody shill for an East Coast Mitt Romney like you have for Oz. This guy here, you know what? People are like, well, okay, so why do I not support Dr. Oz? I only need one reason not to support Dr. Oz. I only heard one thing about him, and automatically I was like, that's not the guy. You know why? Because he supported puberty blockers for teenagers and kids, right? So, right there, I don't know how much more you need to hear about the guy to fucking vote for him and to be like, well, he can win. I don't care if he can win because I don't need another Mitt Romney. I don't want another Mitt Romney. You know what, dude? I'll take a Joe Manchin over Mitt Romney.
You ain't gonna get a Joe Manchin in Pennsylvania. That ain't what you're going to get in Pennsylvania. Look at your Senate candidates. You're telling me right now that you're going to allow the blue senator to win.
Have you met Mitt Romney? Dr. Oz today, dude. Oz today already attacked Trump. They came out and they asked him about 2,000 mules today. You know what he said? Well, I'm not going to get into all that. He hemmed and hawed about it. He wouldn't comment on what he thought about it. I wonder how Donald Trump took that when he saw it.
Well, I'm probably more of a McCormick fan. First of all, my point is your lady Kathy cannot win, and if she wins the primary, which she won't, she wins the primary, that seat goes blue. That's all I'm saying.
You guys keep voting for these same people over and over again because they're going to win. And okay, so if they win, okay. So what if they win? What happens? Nothing different happens. Nothing different.
No, I'll take a Republican vote 75% of the time before I take 0 Republican votes for the next 2 years or 4 years.
You know what I'll take? I'll take the 57 Republicans who voted no to send $40 billion of my dollars to Ukraine. That's who I'm going to vote for.
I like that.
I'm going to vote for them guys. I'm not going to vote for the Mitt Romneys. I'm not going to vote for the Republicans who said, yeah, let's send more money to Ukraine. You know what? Not on top of that, I'm going to go to Ukraine and shake Zelensky's hand so he knows which routing and account number to send it to. Because that's what you're voting for when you continue to vote for these assholes that are doing the same thing time and time again, but you vote for them because, well, I don't want the other side to win. You know what? At this point, I don't care if either side wins. Let the ship burn. Let the ship burn to the ground sooner rather than later. You can either deal with it now or you can deal with it when you're 80 and you can't wipe your own ass. So you pick.
The 88-year-old guy kicked a dude's ass in Anchorage, though.
Roger's not going to be kicking anybody's ass when he's 88 years old. He ain't going to be able to throw his damn javelin.
So what about this dude that had the stroke today, John Fetterman? I believe he has his hat in the ring. He's a Democrat, yes. And I actually looked into him. And look, man, I hear you, Josh. I'm just as worked up as you are. Well, no, I'm not. I'm not as worked up as you are, but I'm worked up, just like you are. But you know what? If it's going to be a Democrat, right? If it's going to be a Democrat, can it be a Joe Manchin? Can it be a Joe Manchin? Now look at this guy Fetterman. I mean, I love his picture on his Wikipedia page. It's like, you know, I mean, I could get behind this dude. He's got a gray shirt on. He's got kind of slumped over, giving this halfway smirk, like, "What the hell are you taking a picture of me for?" He's like kind of the blue collar type guy. So I haven't looked into him too much. But if you're gonna have a Democrat, why not that dude? I mean, Roger, have you looked into Fetterman at all?
I remember a little bit because he was on TV a lot. He got a lot of exposure during like the recount and the whole Pennsylvania thing. And I still think there are issues up in Pennsylvania. Not even talking about the 2,000 mules in the ballot. I think what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did was absolutely wrong, and I can't believe that's not been challenged. And maybe it has been. Maybe it is being challenged. Where I don't think that the judge can actually come in and change the election rules, right? I mean, it's got to be legislated and this and that. I mean, I understand there's some fairness that's got to go on, and there may be some, some minute changes, but I mean, he fundamentally changed Pennsylvania's election laws, and we're not talking about like, hey, you need to stay open until everybody in line has been counted or voted or this and that. I mean, like, I think he extended it by over a week, if I'm not mistaken. So, from what I remember, and I haven't looked into him specifically, but from what I remember that time period, he seemed like he was pretty level-headed. I mean, he looks a little quacked out, but he seemed like he was a little level-headed, and I don't recall hearing anything from him on TV that was like, okay, this guy is completely nuts. Now, I don't know what his voting record is at all, and I don't know what I don't know what his stance on any of the issues are. I just know that at the end of the day, whether they're fake Republicans or not, I'd rather obviously have diehard conservatives, but I'll take a Republican that's going to vote red 75% of the time before I take a Democrat. Because the Joe Manchin, you know how many Joe Manchins, and you can nod your, because Josh's answer to all this is like, F it all. Let's let the blue candidates all win and just burn the Republic to the ground and we start all over. That's Josh's answer to this. And the reality is like, hey, you know how many Joe Manchins there are? One. Period. And Joe Manchin wasn't much of a Joe Manchin up until, all of a sudden here in the last year or two. Now, granted, he's a lot better than a lot of the other quacked out, a lot of the other quacked out. Oh, good Lord, man. A lot of the other quacked out senators, but I guess my question is, go ahead.
No, it's, do you think that it is repairable at this point? Do you think that the Republic, as it stands right now, the condition, do you think it's repairable? Do you think you can bring it back to where it needs to be? I'm talking about everything, all three branches.
That's a question that's a question that probably should have been asked like 50 years ago, bro. I mean, seriously.
No, 100%. And if I was here 50 years ago, maybe I would have asked it, but I wasn't. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is now. So
to answer your question, yes, I do. I think that, and maybe I'm just a blindfolded eternal optimist. But like I said, man, I do think it's fixable. Can we get back to what Thomas Jefferson envisioned? No, because dude, the Civil War totally wrecked all that. I mean, these same conversations were being had in the 1860s. I do think we can get back to some semblance of what we would call normalcy. What we, the three of us and most of our audience would call normalcy, which was the 1980s. I think we can take steps toward that, but I'm being optimistic. I don't see a lot of good. Like Roger, both you guys said, I don't see a lot of good, but I'm trying to be optimistic.
Well, you won't know until the midterms. I mean, to me, that's going to be a very telltale sign. With all of the stuff that's going on now, if the voters across the country don't see that and vote in more true conservatives, then we might be too far down the road to come back. I mean, I don't know what else you would need to see. Like if you're a Democrat, and this always scares me because whenever, the red tide, the red wave, sometimes it's just a red trickle because these elections are local. And Biden is not on the ballot. Now, I got it. It's a referendum against the Democrats and what they voted for and this and that. But the reality is you're voting for local politicians. You're looking, your local leaders, and it's not Biden or Kamala. So it always scares me when they talk about this great red tide. But, it is going to be interesting to see, because I think that's going to determine the direction that we go. Hey, is there that rubber band effect? Because you can say that we're too far gone. Well, hey, man, we just recently elected, President Trump, that I think was putting us back on the right track. But if the majority of the country, especially in those swing states, don't pull us farther to the right and farther away from the crazies, at that point we might be too far gone. I mean, I think, Josh, at that point, with the midterms, I mean, it's going to be a very telltale sign. Do you think we take back? Let me ask you this with the red wave, right? Do you think we take back both branches of the legislature?
So I think we take back the House. If you look at the news that came out of New York today, the New York State Supreme Court basically said that their districts, as they are now, are staying the way they are now, which is a disaster, because basically New York State loses 12 seats to the Republicans. And I think New York only has, I think they have 23 or 24 seats in the House of Representatives. They've lost almost half of those to very, very, very red districts. Wow. So, New York, I mean, New York is freaking out right now. The left is over that. So I think, I do think we take back the House. I think you see a lot of the local elections, skewing it that way. California actually, they lost 2 seats because of the exodus, folks out of California. I mean, those people went somewhere. I don't know if Texas gained seats in the House or not. I don't think they had enough folks, move there that they did. But, Florida, the state Supreme Court just came out and, they finalized Ron DeSantis's, new district map, which, puts Florida two additional seats, for Republicans in the House. So I do think we take back the House. The Senate's a toss up. You have Murkowski is in a fight right now in Alaska. Hopefully she loses. Pray to God she loses. Because she's
Murkowski,
another,
Alaska, or is she Maine?
Yeah, no, Murkowski's Alaska. Susan Collins is Maine.
Collins, thank you.
Yeah. So I think Susan Collins is, up for, I think she's up for re-election. I have to go back and look, but Susan Collins, she's another one of these. She's always playing it safe because Maine's one of those weird states. I mean, granted they only have 2 electoral votes because there's 50 people that live in Maine. But I think you're going to see, when it comes to the midterms, I don't think these midterms are going to determine, the fate of the country. I think the fate of the country has already been determined. Yes, we elected Donald Trump in 2016. Look what the establishment did to him. Look at what the establishment, people are like, oh, there is no such thing as a deep state, which is bullshit. There's absolutely a deep state. Both sides did their best to destroy Donald Trump and make sure that no other outsider ever will be elected president ever again. I'm telling you right now, unless there is just a straight, I'm talking about Reagan, carries all but one state type presidential election, you will not see an outsider get elected again. It will be an establishment person because they made sure that by weaponizing the media, the intelligence community, the Department of Justice, everything to make sure that he was not successful. And so this crap of, well, we elected Donald Trump and, that's a good sign. Look what the establishment did to him. That was a message, not only to Trump, but to anybody else who thought that, oh, you think you want to run for president as an outsider? You better think again because we will absolutely destroy you. It's the course.
So what do you think?
Is not.
What do you think the GOP strategy is going to be? And this is all hypothetical. Let's say because we looked at some of the primaries. What was it, Indiana and Ohio or whatever it was, where he went 22-0, and Trump endorsed candidates. So let's say that an overwhelming majority of the folks that he endorses end up winning in the midterms. How do you think that changes the GOP strategy going forward to 2024?
I don't think the GOP has a strategy to change at all.
That's fair.
They're not
Because they're
synchronized.
both scratching their heads right now. I mean, with his endorsements with the last primaries, I mean, the Democrats and I agree with you, the Democrats and GOP were both shaking their heads. Both of them just want him to go away.
Right.
And it's like, it would have been great if he'd have gone 0-22, which wasn't going to happen. And now they're like, fuck, now we have
No.
to continue to deal with this.
The big telltales is those 22 candidates that ran the table, that he endorsed, for the most part, not all, for the most part, they were pretty safe picks to begin with. They were already in pretty
Right.
they were already in pretty red districts. They were in red areas, and they beat out some of their career incumbents. Where it's going to be telling, the Trump backing, where it's going to be telling is in Georgia with Kemp and that race. That's where you're going to be able to really tell whether Trump's backing has any teeth behind it or not. So, but it's, dude, whatever. It is not recoverable. We're in that Maverick flat spin to sea, and Goose is gonna die. But we've seen this movie. It's gonna happen.
So apparently, Tucker Carlson tonight, this is Monday night, Tucker Carlson described Dan Crenshaw as Eye Patch McCain. I think that's awesome. That's better than Tits McGee, bro. That's awesome, man.
Oh,
I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna happen with the midterms. Rogers 100%. This is a telling time, and I am interested to see how it goes. I kind of fall on Josh's side on this. I think that the House is going to be the red, wave somewhat, but I don't know about the Senate, man. I don't know. We'll see. But what I'm really looking forward to, man, is we'll probably be on episode like 112 by the 2024 run up. But I'm really interested to see what happens with that, man. I just really wish. I think Trump's going to run. I think that's his plan right now. But I want to see DeSantis grab his sack and step up, man. I really do. I mean, we talked about this, and things change, folks. I mean, we talk about things a lot, and our opinions change, and presented with new facts and new revelations and everything. And I want to get Roger's updated viewpoint on, does DJT run again, man? I mean, what's the thought process there? I mean, what's the thought process with DeSantis? He's got to know that DeSantis is a powerhouse right now. So what does he do? Like, convince DeSantis to run as his VP? Or does DeSantis go out on his own and grab his sack and just be like, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to go my way. I don't know. I mean, right now it just kind of seems like the GOP is a little bit in flux, like you were saying earlier, and Josh was saying. I don't think they have a plan, and I don't know. It's just these midterms are kind of confusing to me with Barnett and Oz and McCormick in Pennsylvania, all the belly aching about JD Vance. What do you think? I mean, how do you see 2024 playing out? I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on the midterm, so don't say that if you can. But how do you see that going?
I don't think Donald Trump runs. I think Josh called this early on, so we have to give him some credit where it's due. Where I think DeSantis runs. I think right now, unless Florida just melts and self-destructs here in the next two years, I don't know how DeSantis is not the front runner. Maybe you can get on board with Donald because Trump is a narcissist. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So maybe he says, "Hey, I'm running," and can convince DeSantis to be his VP. He's got one term, and says, "Okay, now you'll." There is some strategery there, right? Like, hey, I'll go be the president. You're the VP, and then I do my 4 years, and then you can do another 8 as the president. So maybe you get 12 years out of the gig or what have you. I don't know. DeSantis goes for that because it seems like, especially with our current VP. She's not really going to go into this next election with a whole lot of momentum on her side, right? So ultimately I don't think Trump runs. I mean, he is getting older. I mean, the guy looks good, I get it, but he is getting older. I think he's having a lot of fun doing what he's doing now because he has a lot of control. He can pretty much say what he wants. He can do whatever he wants. Historically, he's already been the president, so it's like, why even mess around with that stuff? You can just continue to to press the candidates that you want and control things from the outside as an outsider. And then you have DeSantis, which I think is playing the right. I see a little bit of the Youngkin, which I think Josh already MF'd Youngkin earlier this week. So we got to do an episode of people that we're MFing, like who we hate and why we hate them. Because you're on Josh's good side for about 96 hours. And then after that, there's an MFer coming right at you. But I think with DeSantis, you're starting to see a little bit of that Youngkin strategy where, hey, you're running on Trump's policies and some of the same principles, but not necessarily invoking Trump and all this stuff.
No. So Youngkin is not. Youngkin should be taking notes from DeSantis, because DeSantis just signed a bill into law today, which makes it illegal to target people's residence for protests. So Glenn Youngkin, you're not listening to this, but you could probably take a that playbook and do the same thing. Be a governor, do your job, do what you're supposed to do, and not allow people to target Supreme Court justices at their house, which is, last time I checked, it's a felony. But whatever.
So what's the difference between Josh loving you and MFing you? About 96 hours.
96 hours. Maybe 72 hours. Well, and Josh brings up a good point, though. He brings up a good point. Okay. So, you obviously had and that was another one of the topics we're going to bring up, was the protests, which according to USC Title 18, Section 1503, right? Pretty illegal. Everybody kind of says that. Everybody goes along with that and agrees with that. So, Josh, why doesn't Youngkin, when that happens, why not use your state law enforcement to go out there and start arresting people? That's what I don't get. I don't understand that. Why are you pushing Garland? Why are you waiting for the feds to jump in and the marshals and this stuff? It's like, hey, you've got state police. You go out there and you arrest them, right?
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't understand why he allowed that. So there's some back and forth on, can you protest, in front of somebody's residence? Can you not protest in front of somebody's residence? It's been pretty clear for a while, right? So in 1988, Frisbee versus Schultz, the Supreme Court upheld a residential picketing ban. It was, you can march through a neighborhood. You can walk through a residential area, on the sidewalks, holding up your signs and, chanting whatever, whatever you're going to chant, whatever you're protesting, but you cannot target somebody's residence. You cannot stop and target their residence. You can walk through a neighborhood and walk through a residential area, but you can't stop and target somebody's house. Right. And that's upheld by the Supreme Court. Multiple state courts have, upheld the same ruling. They've upheld it. Florida and a couple other states went to, hey, you have to, and a lot of this came out of when, abortion clinics were targeted, and then they went to the homes of the doctors working at abortion clinics. And there was, absolutely, there were death threats made and stuff like that. And it was like, hey, you cannot have that at people's residences. One, because their families are there. Okay. Their kids didn't sign up for that. Their family didn't sign up for that. And two, they have neighbors. So it's that unwanted. You can go do what you want. You can say what you want, but the person you're targeting, it's not just them. Now there's other people wrapped up in it too. And so a lot of it came out of that. And so one of the answers was, okay, fine. You can protest in some areas in some states, but there's a 300-foot exclusion zone, right? You've got to be 300 feet away from that residence. Well, I mean, any Northern Virginia McMansion neighborhood, if you're 300 feet away from a house, that means there's 8 houses in between you and them, right? And if you're 300 feet, you're not on the sidewalk, you're down the street. So I don't understand why Youngkin didn't, send the state police in there. Hell, Lori Lightfoot blocked off entire streets in Chicago during the BLM riots, during the mostly peaceful, when they were burning down businesses and destroying, their own neighborhoods because they're not very smart. She closed off entire streets with the cops. And Glenn Youngkin's like, well, we're monitoring the situation. No, you're not. You're not monitoring the situation, Glenn. You're not doing your job. That's what you're doing. Not your job. So guess what? He rode Trump's coattails into office, but when it came time, everybody wants to be a gangster until it's time to do gangster shit. And Glenn Youngkin came up short. So Glenn Youngkin, you can F off.
Speaking of gangster, I'm getting a very falling down type feeling from Justice Clarence Thomas lately. The guy is like done. I think he's done. So what I would recommend that Clarence Thomas and his lovely wife Virginia Lamp do is just pull a Mark McCloskey on him. Pull some McCloskeys, man. Come out your house with your AR-15 and show him who's boss, and then we can get to the bottom of this nonsense. But man, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if Clarence Thomas just snapped and did something like that, dude. That dude is freaking done. He replaced freaking Thurgood Marshall, and he's watching this country burn. You think Josh is pissed? Boy, I bet you if you catch Clarence Thomas in his more, honest hours, brother, I'm telling you, that guy would have a thing or two to say. But Roger, was there ever a more disgusting bullet to dodge in the Supreme Court than Merrick effing Garland? Dude, that guy is a piece of garbage.
It's funny because as we tweet a lot with Nikki Fried or whatever her name is down in Florida, and you've got all these blue checks on the left that are like, oh, you're Nikki Fried, and I always just post a picture. Here's the last candidate you voted for governor, and it's a picture of Andrew Gillum passed out naked on the floor with like a crack pipe next to him. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's like, hey, elections have consequences, and some of these folks just aren't qualified. And I think it's not even, there's obviously an institutional and educational piece and experience piece, but there is some ideological piece to where you just can't be that far off base. And that just goes with the entire administration. I mean, I get it was a different, admin before, but like everybody they pick, like nobody gets vetted in this administration ever. I don't even think we brought up the Ministry of Truth and what's her name, Nina Jankowicz or whatever the hell her name is, they're just like, what do you mean there's some TikTok videos that she's put out there? I mean, like, seriously? Like, do you not know what's out there and some of the stuff that she's put out in the social media forums? I mean, there's just absolutely there's no vetting at all. Either there's no vetting or they just don't care because ideologically she is exactly what they're looking for. So Josh said it before, 1984 wasn't a how-to guide. Like some of this stuff you cannot make up. You can't make it up. I mean, dude, I don't even understand it. It's and I think you're spot on with the with Merrick Garland. I mean, look how close you were to having that guy as a Supreme Court justice.
The simple fact that not every single person in Congress on both sides came out, yes, and railed against this new Ministry of Truth, as they call it, this disinformation Department of Homeland Security office. The fact that every single elected official in this country that did not come out and rail against that immediately, that tells you where we are. There's a number of Republicans that didn't even mention it. They didn't even tweet about it. Dan Crenshaw didn't even bother to tweet about it. That's how that we're effed. We are effed, proper effed, 6 waves from Sunday. That's why there is no turning back from the path that we're on. That's why. People are like, oh, we should defund it. No, you shouldn't defund it. You should burn it to the ground. You should burn it to the ground as an example for everybody. It boggles my mind. It boggles my mind. But people are still going to keep voting for these same assholes, thinking that it's going to be different. Oh, it's the abused spouse syndrome, right? It's like re-enlisting in the army, right? Really, it's re-enlisting in the army. The army's like, hey, I know we treated you like shit these couple of years, but man, I tell you what, where you want to go? You got duty station of choice. Where you want to go? Oh shit! Hey, we got Puerto Rico. You want to go to Puerto Rico? I tell you what. Not only I'll go let you live on the beach, I'll give you some money. I'm going to give you some extra money, and you're going to do it because you're like, you know what? Maybe they're not so bad. It was kind of my fault. I didn't act right, so you do it right. You sign that dotted line and you go, and it's good for a little while. Things are good. You're like, oh man, it's so good, and then you get hit in the face again. You just get punched straight in the mouth, and all of a sudden. You're sucking again. And a couple of years later, it's like, hey, sorry we treated you bad. Where you want to go? You want to go to a school? That's what y'all are. Y'all are abused spouses voting for these same people again over and over, thinking that it's going to be different next time. It's
Well,
not.
somebody's got to win, and until Jesus Christ comes and runs for office, I got to vote for whatever candidates
It's
are
not
available.
even,
Right?
dude. It's
That's the
not
way it
even
is.
that. It's not even that. It's not even that. It's
It absolutely
just
is.
like Roger going to the extreme. Going to the extreme. I'm not looking for Jesus Christ. I don't need a savior. I got one. But the guy who's recommending out there pushing puberty blockers for kids, yeah, it ain't that guy. That guy ain't it
Well,
either.
it's probably not the one who hates all gays and Islam either.
No, I
Just
agree.
saying.
I agree. And presented with that new information, I wouldn't vote for her either. I just wouldn't vote.
I particularly loved the autobiographical monologue that Josh just gave. Keep in mind, folks, this is a guy who retired from the military.
I was going to say by his own admission, Luke is the smart one, right?
Yeah,
because I quit. That's right, I quit.
Luke was the one that got out of that abusive relationship, but he went into a more abusive relationship after that. So I don't know that he's the smart one.
Just a different spouse. He just moved to a different trailer. Was all he did.
Exactly. Same trailer park, different trailer.
And more than once too, man. You hear about and more than once, yeah. You see these women. Oh, it's her fourth marriage. It's like, yeah, that's Luke. He's on his fourth abusive relationship. But man, dude, that was awesome, Josh. Yeah, that was awesome. The Puerto Rico thing, I was like, oh my God, he's talking about himself.
So yeah, he's obviously got a lot of pent up anger for over 2 decades in the military that he just
I got scars.
I
got scars.
I want to ask y'all both a question. Okay, so on the recent trip I took down to the border, you have some time at night, to unwind and stuff. And I tend to not watch new things when I'm trying to unwind. I go back to something that's comfortable. So, or that I've only seen like maybe once. I'm like, I want to watch that again. So I watched Generation Kill again. And, actually Josh's, little monologue there kind of reminded me of Generation Kill, where all these Marines are like, I'll never re-enlist, all this stuff. So Roger, what's your go-to? Like, what do you want to watch again?
I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. I'll flip through, and my wife hates it because she knows, like, she'll see it come up on the guide, and she's like, "Good Lord, we're getting ready to watch this," because it's almost like some people watch MTV's Real World or any of the other variety. I don't even know if it's on anymore, but the reality shows, because it just turns your brain to mush. And I watch these movies because that's kind of what I want. I already know what's going to happen. I know the majority of the lines, so I'm able to kind of sit there in a vegetative state. But you look at anything like Full Metal Jacket. You look at Platoon, you look at Shawshank Redemption. If that comes on, I'm flipping to that. 9 times out of 10. Any of the Clint Eastwood movies, the old ones and the new ones, I'll watch any of that stuff. So I mean, there's probably a good 5, 10, 12 that, hey, if they come on, we're watching it. I just get pissed off if those shows happen to be on like network television and there's commercials on it. I'd much rather catch it on Showtime or HBO or whatever. And apparently Luke doesn't like my choice of movies that I'm watching because he just said screw it. And I think he might have just walked off set, but it's all good. So I don't know, Josh, what I know you're a big Full Metal Jacket, Platoon, that type of stuff. What other movies, Schindler's List, that's another one that I'll watch over and over and over again. What am I missing here? What else would you watch as a go-to?
I'm kind of the same, kind of the same way, with Platoon. Full Metal Jacket, I watch Full Metal Jacket. Of course, my favorite part of Full Metal Jacket, generally when they get done with basic training,
it's the first half. Okay, right?
Yeah, you turn it off. But I like some of the older John Wayne movies, like Sands of Iwo Jima. Is a really good one. Pretty much anything with Clint Eastwood, especially if it's one of the older, spaghetti westerns, or something like Outlaw Josie Wales. If I see one of those, if I see one of those on, which is you very rarely see, any of the old Clint Eastwood movies on, unless it's on like, TNT or Turner Classic Movies or something. But those are kind of my go-tos. The later ones. Shawshank Redemption is one of the one of those. It's just a great movie. You know,
Did
Do
you
you
so yeah,
see
guys
I'm
the?
gonna say both.
go ahead?
Go ahead, Roger. Okay, all right, all right. Did you guys see Clint Eastwood's latest Cry Macho? I watched like the first 15 minutes, and I'm not saying it was bad, but I didn't have it. I wasn't gonna invest 2 hours in it. But the dude looked so frail. It was kind of hard to watch. Did you guys watch the latest Clint Eastwood?
Mm-mm.
No, I haven't seen it. But I also haven't seen the Mule either. Um, I haven't seen that one yet. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It looks good, but I saw him. I saw a picture of him. It's probably been a couple weeks, and it was kind of tough to look at because it was like, wow. I mean, dude. He's not buying green bananas anymore. Um, you know, it's going to be a sad day when Clint Eastwood goes. It's going to be a sad day,
Yeah. Do you guys turn subtitles on your shows yet, or is it just a me thing?
bro.
Not yet.
I've been turning subtitles on for like 2 years.
Now, is it now? And I'm telling you, our listeners out there that might be a little bit younger than us, and Luke, I don't know if you do this or not, dude. I'm telling you, it's like watching a new movie. I mean, am I right? It's like there is so much stuff on there that you miss that you think you heard. It's like the old phrase, in Tombstone, where I'll be your, I'm your Huckleberry. I actually looked that up, and it was supposed to be I'm your Hucklebearer, which was a pallbearer. Val Kilmer just made it up on the spot, and that's just what stuck. But anyway, it just made me think. It's like, dude, start turning on subtitles. Now I turn them on for everything, and I must have missed like 30% of everything that I've ever watched, like
Yeah,
ever.
yeah. No, dude, the wife she turned them on for me like 2 years ago because I'm deaf,
Best
and
thing ever.
yeah, dude, it was like a baby when they get the cochlear implants for the first time, and they're like they hear noises for the first time. They're all smiling, looking around.
See, Luke is laughing. Luke, take a movie that you've watched 1,000 times, right? Your all-time favorite. Cut subtitles on and rewatch it.
Okay, so I tried this years ago with a movie called Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. You guys seen that movie?
No.
There's this crime
Government
boss or
take.
whatever you want to call him named Rory, and Rory says something at one point, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard. But you can't tell what he's saying because it's that Hockney or that Hackney accent or whatever it is. So I turned the subtitles on just so I could memorize what he said and maybe say it in real life. You know what the subtitles said? Unintelligible speaking.
Well,
So what I yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say that was the same with Snatch. With Brad Pitt's, they're the pikeys, and it's like, dude, I don't know what they're saying. Like, I got to turn subtitles on for this.
Yeah, telling
So
you.
Rod, go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry,
just
we're
saying for our
stepping on you.
listeners out there, if you're not already doing it, turn them on. It'll change your life. And I don't even do because you have like the regular subtitles that the network puts out. I actually went to the Dish or Direct TV subtitles. They're slightly different and a little bit better quality. So I'm kind of curious. We'll have to get some feedback from our listeners out there. If they don't already do it, turn them on. Change your life.
Well, now that's going to be on my mind no matter what all the time. So Roger's giving us the one more time around and close out. So I'll go ahead and give some shout outs here. I think sorry about the storm. It's just now blowing in, man. Now it's starting to really rain, and the poor wife is driving home from the west side. So give some prayers for her. But real quick, I want to give a shout out to Keep Your Powder Dry, Cajun Conservative, Ginger Inferno. Go over and check his stuff out on Facebook. As always, Carlton Zeus, the Mere Fool, El Mario Necio. Man, that's some funny stuff. Look it up on YouTube. The movie, it's 5.5 minutes long. They really put some work in that, and it is hilarious. So check that out. Hey, Dylan down in El Paso, man, thanks for listening. Really appreciate you giving us a chance, and I appreciate your feedback. And last but not least, and I'll kick this to Josh because this is going to be perfect for him to expound on a little bit. All those folks out there giving us 1-star reviews, you're not listening, I know, but we appreciate it because a 1-star review is better than a no-star review. So for those of you who haven't gone over to iTunes to give us a review or like our videos on YouTube, why don't you go ahead and do that and offset some of those 1-star reviews because our social medias are pissed off a bunch of people and got our account shut down for 12 hours.
Hey man, I do what I can. Hey, at the end of the day, I picked this up. I think out of that, I think I picked this up 2 or 3 followers on on the Twitter machine.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, man, get those 1-star reviews in, baby. Because yeah, you're right. 1-star reviews are better than no star review. Yeah. So quick backstory on that. There was I mean, just straight batshit crazy progressive on Twitter who hates guns, hates America, hates freedom, and probably hates John Wayne and Clint Eastwood too. And she was all this, that, and the other, and I was like, you know what? And it's like, well, go give us a rating. Go leave us a 1-star rating. I was like, go leave it to it. Go do it. I dare you. And she retweeted it, to her, 13 followers, and I think she was the one that went and left us a 1-star review with no, no words or anything like that.
We
And
got
it
another
was,
one today.
oh, did we? I love it.
That's
Hilarious.
awesome.
Hilarious. I love it. So we needed some haters. I'm trying to get us some haters. Yeah, and our account, so we got shut down for 12 hours. Who cares? Whatever. Out there doing the Lord's work, man. The Lord, hey, they tried to silence the Lord too. So I don't have any shout outs. There's a lot of people I want to shout out, but I didn't write it down. I'm not as diligent as Luke is. I'll shout you out on the next episode. But to cap this one off, here's what I got to say, and I'm going to kick it to Roger. So Luke threw up this quote. I forget when it was. He tagged a bunch of us here a week or two ago, but it's from 13 Hours. And, it just kind of speaks a lot to where I'm at, feelings wise, with the country and with where everything is and the state of affairs. And the quotes, warriors aren't trained to retire. We were young and we were giving ourselves to something bigger, but that something bigger is gone now. So I don't know, anybody else, especially Memorial Day coming up and everything. Reach out to your buddies, check on your buddies, take care of your buddies. And with that, I'll throw it over to Roger.
All right. Well, I got a couple of shout outs. One, big shout out to Luke's dad. For those that saw the video on there, again, I'm probably not going to ancient Greece anytime soon. He sent me a javelin and I am watching. It's so funny because I have a desk that faces my wife. We face, each other when we work, and I'm playing YouTube videos with this Olympic javelin thrower. And she's like, "Are you serious?" Like, "Hey man, I'm going to get good at this thing." So I think I'm down to like out of every 10 throws, I stick about 7 of them. So, I'm getting a little bit better, but man, I tell you what, that stuff is a lot harder than it looks. I mean, you think you're just going to get out there and chuck this thing like 100 yards? Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen. So big shout out to him. Very cool. And, it's funny because my neighbors come over and even my mom, I had them all throw the javelin at least once. I'm like, hey, how many people can actually say that they've thrown a javelin before? So it's pretty wild. So I definitely thank him for it. Also want to thank Luke's wife, Michelle, and the Grateful Goat Gallery. So, because of some timing and conflicts or whatever, I got some Mother's Day cards out late, but I basically had her paint 4 different Mother's Day cards for me. I had to give them to my mom and my mother-in-law and grandmother and that type of stuff, but they were fantastic. And I tell you, my mother-in-law actually brought her to tears, and I was like, hey, this is stuff that was originally painted. There's only one of these, and this is what I thought of you and this and that. So, and she did a fantastic job. I didn't get a chance to thank her enough because now, we had to teach her a little bit of OPSEC because she tagged me on Facebook. I'm like, hey, it's not Mother's Day yet. Like, take that crap down because they're going to see this stuff or whatever. But she did an awesome job and also got me off the hook. So I think we're, I told her to go ahead and get spun up for Christmas because my intent is to have like 20 or 30 of these things actually go out. So it'll be the first time I've done it in like 2 decades. But I'm going to leave everybody with this to close us out. Some words of wisdom. Our world is more interconnected and interdependent. That is especially true when it comes to the climate crisis, which is why we will work together and continue to work together to address these issues, to tackle these challenges, and to work together as we continue to work, operating from the new norms, rules, and agreements that we will convene to work together on to galvanize global action. With that, I thank you all. This is a matter of urgent priority for all of us, and I know we will work together or work on this together. And with that, keep your canteen cups tightly secured.